Hi, everyone, and welcome to Biolyfe Learning, a platform for us to spread some information about topics we at Biolyfe feel strongly about. We'll cover a host of topics that deal with anti aging techniques, longevity practices, the latest regenerative biologics, and any new and promising science in this field. Feel free to send us questions and share our content. Let's take back control of our biology. Welcome to another episode of Biolyfe Learning with myself, Brian, and Dr. Peter Schulz. Today we're going to be talking about exercise and movement and its role in aging and longevity. Now, Doc, when we're talking about the world of anti-aging and longevity, a lot more is mentioned now on nutrition and sleeping well and stress management, vitamins, regenerative biologics, medication, supplements, these things coupled with hyperbaric chambers and hot and cold therapy and that whole range that we're all listening to at the moment.
Yeah.
These are obviously all great things and they're all very beneficial things. But there's obviously a service and a consumable side to all of that, and there's money to be made for a lot of different practitioners and different doctors and whatever the case. One thing that I feel that we're chatting about less and less is exercise and movement.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like it's being swept under the rug a little bit. How much of a role does exercise and movement play in anti-aging and longevity?
It's a really good question. You're right. There's a whole bunch out there that can be done.
Yeah.
Services and interventions and stuff like that. Too often, I think people are not given credit for what they actually really themselves can do, that it's all free, and how powerful it actually is.
Yeah.
We're always looking at, well, do you have this problem or that problem, and can we intervene and treat a certain problem? And you're right, there's a business model and money to be made out there with that, but what we really here at Biolyfe are trying to do is try to help you really be in control of your health outcomes as much as possible. There are always going to be treatments and interventions that will be necessary or will help you along those paths. So when you talk about all the different things that you can do and that you should do, like sleep and stress management, nutrition, you talk about supplements, you talk about medications, you talk about therapies or anything else. If we're talking about our health outcome and 100% of our health outcome, all of those things equal 50% of our health outcome, as well as, longevity and health span, how long we're healthy. The whole other 50% is movement and exercise.
That's a big amount.
It's a big amount. It's that important. I mean, it's almost frustrating to a lot of scientists when they're researching things. They're oftentimes looking at, what's the best thing for your brain? What's the best thing for your heart? Maybe we can find a certain molecule or a certain thing that we can add that really is the best for your whole heart therapy or health. And, they go down these paths and keep researching and find out eventually, it's exercise and movement. Seems like it's the best. And now it's not just heart. It's every single piece of our body.
Yeah.
Exercise and movement activates all of the pathways that we talk about when we're trying to intervene with other therapies. Like if you do hot and cold therapies, you get in a sauna, you get into a cold plunge. These are activating certain mechanisms and pathways in your body that are very healthy for you. Exercise touches on every one of them.
Yeah, of course.
And when we actually do this and move regularly throughout the day and then exercise a bit, we are improving our brain function, our heart function, our musculoskeletal function, our digestive system, our liver, our kidneys, all the different organ systems. It's not just building muscle. And it's going to be individual to a person as well. And one of the main things about that is people think, I need to exercise. That means I need to go out there and try as hard as I can and have the best workout of my life.
Not necessarily.
No, absolutely not. And especially for longevity or health span, increasing your health span. Now, you can go work hard. It's not bad for you. You have to recover properly after that, though. And that's also where people get in trouble. They don't recover properly after hard exercise. The main thing that we want to encourage people to do is consistent level of movement throughout every day. So if you use an example, for instance, and you said, well, I work at a computer and I get up in the morning, I have a little bit of movement, and then I go sit down for 3 or 4 hours at a computer. Then I get up and go get some lunch and come back and sit down again. And then I leave work and maybe I go to the gym, or maybe I go do some exercise for a half an hour, an hour.
Go walk.
Well, that's just that's bare minimum. That's you've spent most of the day not moving around. We need to move, rest, move, rest, move, rest. And then when we exercise, that's going to be individual. How can I do something to make my body work a little bit harder than it's used to doing? Not, this is what somebody else can lift, I need to lift that. Or this is how far somebody else can run, I need to run that far. A little bit harder. It's personal from that standpoint. So it's so important, and exercise and movement is literally the number one thing that we can do.
And I guess it's also the only thing that all professionals agree on.
Yeah,
is that
right.
that everyone has something to say about every other therapy and things. Everyone's got a this and that.
Yeah.
But movement and exercise is the one thing that everyone agrees on. You have to do it.
Yeah.
You must be doing it.
The statistics are, well, they're a little worrisome and kind of a little bit scary as well, to see what happens to people when they stop moving. And it's not just about like what we think of as exercise, it's everyday movement.
Yeah.
Going to the grocery store, walking around, working in your yard, playing golf, taking a walk with friends, just doing normal movements. These things start to decrease when people have problems. So the statistics, the number of people who have a fragility fracture, like a hip fracture because of fragile bones or something like that, and literally die within 2 years, is really high when you're over 60 years old. And it doesn't have to be. The people who come out of that just fine are the ones who get back to movement because they actually restore their body's function and capability. So it is absolutely important that we don't let injuries, we don't let pain and problems stop us from doing our daily activities that we otherwise would be doing.
We have to be doing those things, and you can. That is your link between anti-aging and longevity and movement.
Right.
That's where we can't just stop just because the world thinks that we have to completely slow down and stuff as we get older and older and older. One of the reasons we get older and older and older is because we've slowed down. It's not really the other way around.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So there are a few reasons why we stop moving as well. And this is something that's really important. I really want to talk about this today because there are two topics that I really want to hit on, because I feel like I've been doing this for 18 years or over 18 years now, and there are common themes that I see over and over and over with how people get shuffled through a system with these couple conditions, and they don't get better because the system is never actually trying to help them get better. They're trying to help them manage their decline. And the first one is arthritis.
Yeah.
Arthritis is huge, right? Everybody knows somebody with arthritis, or they have it themselves. Now, arthritis, there are a lot of different forms of arthritis. We're not going to talk about every form of arthritis today, but there's rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis, a bunch of different arthritis. But one of the most common is osteoarthritis.
You're more what people think of, more wear and tear.
What people think of as wear and tear. But I'm going to contradict that today. Yes, it kind of is wear and tear. This is what we've been told for a long time. But it's not really wear and tear. Movement. People think, oh, I've overused my knee. I've run too much. I've just done too much activity in my life on my knee.
Years of construction, or years of standing, or whatever.
Right. I want to add a caveat to that. It's improper movement, improper activity with your knee, for instance, that wears it out. It's not movement. It's not overuse, because movement literally keeps that joint regenerating. We have in our joints something called hyaline cartilage, and that makes that joint, the surface of that bone, really, really smooth. And arthritis is one of the characterizations of arthritis is that hyaline cartilage gets chewed up, and it starts to degenerate, and then we end up with two bones kind of rubbing against each other without that cushion in between, and it's very painful. The reason osteoarthritis or degenerative arthritis happens is because initially, usually you have a little bit of an injury or a little bit of a problem that starts off an inflammatory pathway. That inflammatory pathway is supposed to heal, and if it doesn't resolve, if you don't actually heal and the inflammation resolves on the back end, you continue an inflammatory pathway inside that joint, and if that stays there for years, that's what wears your knee down.
So
that's
a bit
what
of a
wears
bad
the joint
cycle of not fixing it to get
That's
inflammation,
right.
not fixing it, getting inflammation, and that's the pain that you're having all the time.
That's the pain that you're having, and that's what wears the knee out. It's not your movement, it's not running, it's not the exercise or otherwise activity on the joint, it's the inflammation that wears it out. And that's super important to understand because that wears it out over years, and that's never addressed in the mainstream medical systems as far as how somebody might look at their knee and say your knee has a little bit of arthritis in there. We might want to do a corticosteroid injection, which actually ruins the joint. It actually ruins the cartilage more. It degenerates it more. You have a chance of it feeling a little bit better for a little while.
It's temporary.
It's temporary, and there's new research showing that when you do a steroid injection, even one injection into a joint, it's not only going to ruin that quicker, it's also going systemic. It's also ruining some cardiovascular function. It's ruining your gut microbiome, and it's wearing on your neurologic system. These things are really important to keep intact, and there's no reason to do that if it's not helping the actual problem. So we have to take care of the inflammatory problem. People ask, okay, well, corticosteroids or steroids, don't they stop inflammation? Or does an ibuprofen or an anti-inflammatory stop inflammation? Yes, but it doesn't stop the reason the inflammation is there. That's what has to happen. And that's what we do with our programs, is we stop the reason that the inflammation is there in the first place, and we resolve that inflammatory process, and then we can rehabilitate the joint. Because when I see people who have been suffering with these joint problems for years, and they've been here and they've been there, they've tried a bunch of different treatments, it's not that the individual treatments were wrong or ineffective as a treatment.
Maybe just the execution of it.
It's usually bad timing. They're usually trying a treatment for something that should be done after another one or in a certain order, and they don't succeed because they're just kind of keeping something in pain or aggravating it, and it's being done at the wrong time. We have to do things in a very specific order and pattern, and it has to be comprehensive, and that's what we do with joints such as knees or hips or something that has been diagnosed as arthritic. And sometimes people say, hey, we need to replace these joints, that you're going to have a knee replacement. Well, we're actually seeing that these things are salvageable.
Yep.
We can salvage them, we can regenerate them as well, and those are the procedures we're doing here in the office.
And those can also cause more problems, those procedures, like replacing
Absolutely.
the knee and stuff. It has other problems going both ways. You have a knee problem, it ends up becoming an ankle problem or a hip problem.
That's right.
And you start getting arthritic issues in those places as well.
That's right. And that leads me right into the spine.
Yeah.
Arthritis is a really common cause of people not being able to move and exercise. The next one is lumbar disc herniations or disc herniations in the low back or disc problems.
Everyone knows someone with a slip disc or herniated disc, or they can't move a certain way, or they stopped moving a certain way because their lower back problems, and everyone knows someone that's in that situation.
These are not things that you should just accept as, well, I have a back problem, I can't do these things. Doc said I shouldn't play golf. He said I should limit my exercise. I can't do these things because I have a back problem. I have degeneration in my spine. I have disc herniations.
Yeah.
I have ruptured or bulging or whatever disc. I'm telling you, it's absolutely not the case. You can really, really, really get these things better. And the path that people are led down, now I have patient after patient, this is one of the most common things we see here in this practice, is lumbar disc herniations.
Yep.
And a lot of times people think, oh, I have a disc herniation, that was seen on MRI. I must need a surgery for that. Well, I'll tell you, that's the
great
worst thing to do for that. Yeah, exactly. But what happens then is you've actually destroyed the area. You've caused more inflammation, more scarring, and dysfunction, and that leads to further problems down the road. I'm going to talk about inflammation again because the reason your disc hurts in the first place isn't always because it's actually injured. It's the inflammation around there and that's going on there that actually causes the pain. We work on resolving the inflammatory process, and if we do that and you do that properly, and then we can decompress the disc, then we can conduct physical therapy and stabilize and improve mechanics. But if we start with the wrong things, if we start with exercising a painful disc herniation, you're going to keep it in pain.
Yeah.
So we have to go through the right phases and the right steps. And I see people having been led down that pathway over and over and over, and until we start over and start to resolve that inflammatory process. Sometimes it's with modalities we do in here, sometimes it's these different types of programs that we run, but we start to resolve that inflammatory process. Then we can treat the disc, then we can correct the mechanics. And then the best news about that is when you compare somebody who goes through this program to somebody who goes down the path of, oh, we're going to do a surgical procedure on here, or a fusion especially. You look at 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years down the road and compare. The people who go through our programs here in 6 months or a year, and then going forward, they are thinking, well, oh yeah, right. I guess I did have a back problem at one point, but I don't anymore. I can do anything I want.
Yeah.
And people who have fusions and surgeries in the lower back for disc problems. Now there are reasons for surgeries in your lower back, but I say very, very, very rarely is it a disc issue. Those people usually 1 and 3 years later end up in another surgery and another surgery, and for the rest of their life they have a back problem, and we don't want to do that. I have a little model here and it can show you exactly and what we like to see with this. You have, I don't know how good the camera's going to pick this up, but when you literally compress that disc,
and that's the spine.
Bulges right out here. This is a spine segment, and here's a nerve segment, and we push on that disc, and there's a disc bulge or disc herniation, and it pushes on the nerve, and it inflames the joint, and it becomes very painful. But these are two of the most common reasons that people lose function. So when we here at Biolyfe are addressing aging as really the actual problem, we have to make people able to move again.
Yeah.
If you have a problem that stops you from doing as much movement and exercise as you otherwise would want to do, then you have to fix that. You have to do everything you can to fix it. You can't just say, well, my ankle hurts, or my hip hurts, and my knee hurts, or my back hurts, and oh, I like to play pickleball, but I can't because my shoulder hurts, and so I just can't do that anymore.
I think people are also a little bit impatient, and we are in a generation of instant gratification.
Yeah.
And we need something quickly, like those corticosteroids you mentioned,
Right.
and quickly strap me up, quickly click my back, quickly do this, quickly do that, and I'll be fine to go play pickleball. I'll be fine to go play golf. And it's all about doing it correctly.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
you mentioned, and like we often tell people, 90% of the stuff is your homework done at home. It's that movement that we're trying to teach people to do it correctly. You can only do so much here in the practice.
Yeah.
They only have an hour appointment or whatever the case.
Yeah.
Doing correct movement and exercise going forward is 90% of your recovery, and allows you to carry on recovering and performing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if there's anything else you want to mention with regards to anti-aging, even arthritis, movement, exercise, this is the time to do it. Otherwise, we can move on from there.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about hallmarks of aging, this is what we're addressing. The hallmarks of aging actually keep expanding as science keeps learning more about body processes and how things work, and then what happens as we get older and how they start to dysfunction. So they tacked on a few more hallmarks of aging. And that's what we're measuring. We measure the hallmarks of aging, and when we fix those things, when we fix the things that cause you to degenerate, to go downhill a little bit, then you can move more. Then you don't have these problems. Then it's not creating the inflammation and the irritation and the constant degeneration.
Well, I think that's a good little reminder that we can't just depend on all these other concepts.
Yeah.
We do have to move to be healthy.
Yeah.
And I think if that's all we get across today, so be it.
Most important thing. That's most important.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us again today. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another Biolyfe learning. Bye.